Good evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It is Sunday, the 8th of June, 2025. We're here to talk about vegetable gardening. Well, I think sometimes we talk about gardening in general. Hope you're well. Hope you've had a great week. It's certainly been an enterprising and rather lucrative week here. I don't know why I came up with those words, just to say it has been a good week. We've had plenty of work done, both on the garden and in the allotment, in amongst getting plenty of rain as well. So basically, very, very happy with what's going on here. Harvested our garlic, harvested broad beans, harvested some peas. Basically, we've got lots of things going on. Now, tonight, I want to talk about whether or not you worry about plant spacing. How much attention do you pay to plant spacing? This is one of those things that we often read in books, magazines, back of seed packets to give yourself so much space between each plant and certainly between each seed. However, do you really pay attention to that? Is that something that concerns you, or do you just carry on without it? So before we get into that, see if we've got anybody joining us tonight. We've got Adrian saying, hello, Richard and all. Good evening to you. We have got, if I can bring the comment up, we've got Jenny there saying, hello, everyone. I hope you are well and have had a great week. Good evening to you. Kate is there. Good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Stuart Jackson, evening, Richard and the Veg Army. Been a mixed week for me, prepping plants for next week's sale and sowing more veg seeds. Good evening to you. Turbo Streamers there. Good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Hargrave Gas. Evening all. Hope you've had a great week. Weather can't make its mind up here. Good evening to you. Nathan is there, aka Allotted Chef. Good evening all. Good evening to you. Nigel, Mr. Sir Muddy Boots is there. Good evening all. Good evening to you. Graham Arnold. Good evening, everyone. Hope you are all well. Good evening to you. Scott is there. Seed to Table Plot 13. Evening all. Good evening all. And Digwell is just saying hi all. He's gone very low key this evening. He normally has a grand entrance. Let's get into it, shall we? So, plant spacing. Plant spacing. How many people has ever worried about how much space they give the plants? Now, this is always one of those things that we often read, as I've said before. We read them in magazines, in the back of seed packets, and many, many other places that tell you to give, I don't know, let's use carrots. I don't know how much room it says to give carrots on the back of a seed packet, thinking about it, but it's probably something like 5 centimeters of space between each plant. How many of you have ever read that or take any notice of that? And Turbo Streamers came straight in saying, I never read the spacing on seed packets. So should we be paying attention to that? But how many other people who takes any notice of it? Who actually takes any notice of how much space they should give their plants? Jenny has been saying, I've been planting out, sowing and planting bean structures ready for someone to secure them for me. I don't do spacing. If I can see soil, I fill it. Everything grows cheek by jowl. So you do. Jenny also doesn't take any notice of seed spacing. Interesting. Kate says, I honestly never take any notice. Interesting. This is actually really very interesting. Nigel says, I space plants evenly. Find it helps so much when running a hoe between rows when weeding. Now, it's such an interesting observation, Nigel, because I posted this on Facebook. Do you worry about plant spacing? When I was saying what this show is going to be about tonight. And I think it was JJ, if I remember correctly, JJ from the Bearded Growers. He came along and he said he didn't in the past, but this year he's been trying to do a bit more at taking notice of this. And he has found it easier to keep on top of weeds. So that's an interesting observation from Nigel and JJ going on there. Turbo Stream says, I tend to use my homemade measuring stick, though, marked every 3 inches. Hargrave, I read the seed packets, but then ignore what they say and worry I've planted them close to each other. So from what I'm reading, most of you don't really take any notice of what the literature says, and that's fine. As I've said time and time again, there's no right or wrong way of gardening in this show. We all talk about it from a perspective of what we want to hear from everybody else. And I'll be honest, I often don't pay any attention to how much space I give my plants. What I like to do is if I've got a space, I can fit a plant in, I will pot a plant in. The only things I do try to make sure I get good distance between would be something like my garlic, maybe when I'm thinning out my carrots, but even then I let them grow to the point I can eat the thinnings. But on the whole, it's a case of just throw it in there and see what happens. Uh, Scott says, I check the spacing, but if it's going on a bed that has loads of mulches, I will plant so much closer than suggested. So that's an interesting observation there. And Digwa says, I don't bother. As Nigel says, I just make sure a hoe can get between the plants. This is very interesting. And Jenny says, I don't have any space around plants. I don't grow in rows or groups, all foliage mixed in together, soil covered, don't really have weeds or pests, all grows very happy. So this is actually very interesting because what I was going to say, one of the reasons I often throw stuff in, but I do find that sometimes it can make my plants look a little bit crowded, a little bit close together. But is that a problem? Is that a problem? Nicholas says, evening, Richard and all. Good evening to you. Nigel says, my spacing does not necessarily match the recommended spaces. I plan on taking crops early. I plant much. If I plan on taking crops early, I plant much closer. Good. And Turbo Stream says, I pulled my cauliflower a bit close as I was filled the hooped tunnel, so the cauliflowers are a bit small, which is fine. Larger space will give larger plants. Idaho's joined. Good morning, Richard and all. Good evening to you. So yeah, this is one of the things. So we often are told in books, magazines, seed packets to give yourselves a certain amount of space between each plant. Let's say chilies, and it probably says something about 30 centimeters of space between the plants. The thing is, I actually think that the seed packets say that to be very generous. I reckon on something like a chili, 20 centimeters of space is plenty. And really, what is the disadvantage of planting closely? Well, roots get too close together. They compete each other for nutrients and water. I guess that would be one of the things. Space as well, giving the space to grow. If they're too close together, they can become a little congested. Another thing that I like to give a bit of space or think about spacing would be to allow airflow. Things like tomatoes or garlic, I've already mentioned, something that needs good airflow around it. If they're too close together, they can get fungal diseases just through poor airflow. So there are some logical reasons as to why we would give space, but who really pays attention? Chili Kate says, I read the instructions and make my own judgment, aware that if too close, it could limit growth. Yeah, and who was this? Stuart says, I tried to teach children about spacing, but my rule is let them lead, so maybe I have to thin more than most. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to children, just letting them get involved in doing the things makes all the difference. Turbo Stream says, I planted my leeks every 6 inches and 9 inch between rows. So like others can get down the rows. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the size of a hoe can limit how much space you give. That's good enough. Graham, what's your email address, Richard? My email address is richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. I'll put it on the screen for you quickly. So yes, giving yourself plenty of space between rows. So I tend to grow all my plants in blocks in that I fill up an entire bed. So I don't tend to worry so much about rows, but it would probably work better for getting the hoe down the bed and clearing away some of those weeds. But I don't really want the weeds there in the first place, and I'm trying to shade them out a bit more. So good. Digwa says that's why onion hoes are usually smaller. Yes. Yeah, that is why onion hoes are usually smaller, so you can fit them between your onions. Anybody harvested any onions yet? So I thought this might be a good long question, a lot of debate going on, but so far everyone seems to be in agreement. I thought we were going to have a real big discussion whether it makes any difference growing closer or growing further apart. But I guess if you are growing the big plants, like the big pumpkins, the competition pumpkins, then space can make a difference. I read a lot of people were saying that when they grow competition pumpkins, they give a lot of space to their plants. Turbo Stream says parsnips. I thickly sow the row. They germinate better than thin. Then as I go, I don't note the final spacing. Just allow a reasonable gap as they hopefully will grow. Yeah, I mean, parsnips are something I also recommend to sow thickly and thin them out as they grow. I'm trying to think. I've got parsnips down on the allotment that have germinated, which I'm rather pleased about because I didn't think we were going to get many root crops this year. We've had a lot of trouble, and I think a lot of people have had trouble with germination of seeds this year. Parsnips have germinated. Carrots are looking like they're very, very few and far between, which is annoying because I would love some carrots. Sam Extreme says my broad beans were about 6 inches apart, but they are dwarf ones. The Saturn. Good enough. Over on Instagram, McCragan has joined. That's the lovely Ian over there. So they said to it. So let's ask the questions. How much space do you give your bean plants? How much space do you give your bean plants on average, would you say? I mean, let me know that. Stuart says, I harvested onions, only small ones, along with broad beans, rhubarb, and red currants. Lucky you. We've got broad beans. I haven't harvested my onions yet. That's probably going to happen in a couple of weeks' time. Harvested my garlic, which has done fantastic again. And then we're looking at, what we're looking at harvesting. My red currants. I want to harvest my red currants, but the neighbour's plot is in the way. In that all the roots, the weeds have grown over my currants, making it very difficult. Digwell, 6 inches for beans. 6 inches, so that's 15 centimetres in new money. Scott says, farmers always seem to grow with plants closer together. You know, this is actually something I have been thinking a lot about, because one of the rules that we have when it comes to peas is they need something to grow up. They need something to hold on to. As I understand it, that encourages them to flower when they can actually climb up something. But you don't ever see farmers in the fields having netting and stuff for their peas to grow up. They seem to grow up each other. So do we really need to net up peas? Question for you. Jenny says, I break every rule. Some plants share a structure. They all share the same beds. I'm a big believer that plants support each other both above and below ground. Yep, I'm with you on that. I am with you on that. Nigel says runner beans 9 to 12 inches, so that's about 10 centimeters to 25 centimeters to 30 centimeters apart. Ian says, evening, Richard and all. I think my potatoes are ready to harvest as they are in flower. I have had 2 cucumbers. I've had 2 cucumbers this week as well. Absolutely delicious. Absolutely delicious. Grown in my auto pots, grown in the greenhouse. Absolutely fantastic. A good sized cucumbers as well. Really pleased with that, I've got to say. Potatoes. Yeah, we harvested our first potatoes yesterday from my first earlies. No sign of flowers on them, but my main crops and second earlies are flowering, so I just figured we needed some. I always leave my first earlies till too late and then wonder why I have so many. Turbo Extreme says French beans are about 12 inches, but I don't measure the gap, just ad hoc erect the bean frame by eye. Cool. Stuart Jackson says my runner beans are about 5 centimeters apart, but they are next to my fence as it was the only space I had. Scott says I planted all my beans today and I gave them about 6 inches. Jenny says, I don't. They are planted next to each other. I also plant a bean pot and pop a seed in at the same time. Succession of beans. Graham says, just sent a picture of you to you of a privet hawk moth. I'll have a look at that in a second. Digwell says, some veg do grow smaller when close together, like collies and cabbages. I'd rather have 2 small collies than 1 big one. Funny enough, I'm with you on that, actually. And I think quite a few of us, there's quite a few of us in the group that don't have a huge family to feed. In our case, it's just me and the wife. And Roxy doesn't eat cabbages or cauliflowers, of course. But 1 large cauliflower is a bit of a waste for the 2 of us. I think that's the same for some of you who live alone. 1 large cabbage is just a bit of a waste. I'd sooner have small ones that make a meal. Okay, we can always freeze the leftovers, but do you really want to do that? Do you really want to freeze stuff when you can eat it fresh, especially things like cabbages and cauliflowers that you can have all year round? Over on Instagram, Dahlia679 has joined, and Bosun Kadan has joined. Welcome along. We're talking about how much spacing do you give your plants. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. Stuart says, my peas are climbing up old shelving with a pumpkin under the rack. Fantastic. Turbo Stream says, while I remember, I'm going to Gardener's World live on Friday so we can meet up. We'll email you in the week, Richard. Be good to catch up with you. Please do email me. Please do. I'll be there Friday and Saturday. Stuart says, I did the same with my beans. 1 plant, 1 seed next to each other. Fantastic, fantastic. So what about tomatoes? How much space do you give your tomato plants, or do you not worry? Again, this is one of the things I've been wondering. I was featured in an article with Sutton's, which was about vertical gardening this week. And it got me wondering about, if things are growing vertically, can we pack in more at the base? And the example given, beans with pumpkins. And I'm thinking that would work. That would very much work at packing things in. Jenny says, great stew, works really well. Hope you have a great harvest. Turbo Stream says, I freeze my produce as I couldn't possibly eat it all in 1 season. So smaller produce is better for me. I think that's going to be an overriding thing. Tomatoes are in post, but around 9-inch are in pots. I think that's meant to be. But around 9 inches if in the soil. But then Digwell goes post, not post. I think that's meant to be pots, not post. Oh, I love it, love it. But yeah, 9 inches, that's 25 centimeters, give or take. Again, I'm growing a lot of my tomatoes in pots this year in the greenhouse, and it's working really well. Nigel says, tomatoes indoors are grown in auto pots. Lovely auto pots. Outdoors, they are 60 centimeters apart. Yeah. My tomatoes are in my auto pots in the greenhouse. Fantastic, fantastic growth from them at the moment. How many of us have auto pots these days? It says, I used to plant tomatoes 3 inches apart, then I went to 2 feet, thinking I will try 18 inches, but lots of pruning. Yeah, I mean, that's quite spacious, Idaho, based on what everyone else is saying. So 18 inches is like twice the distance that Digwell does. So plenty of room. Pots, says Turbo Stream. Okay, so moving on from that, how much room do you give your potatoes then? I mean, most of our potatoes are probably already in the ground, but I do find they are quite, or do need quite a bit of space. Turbo Stream says, your typing errors are getting worse, Dibwell. Oh, fantastic, fantastic. And we do love the typing errors that we get. We love all mistakes here, don't we? Oh, lovely, lovely. Nigel says, outdoor tomatoes, I feel, have better flavour grown outdoors than those grown indoors. I'm with you on that, actually. A few people are with you on that, Nigel. I do find tomatoes grown outdoors, when they're ripened by the sun, they do taste better. But there's still nothing wrong with greenhouse tomatoes. They're still just as good, just don't taste as good. Stuart says, I put tomatoes in pots so I can move them apart when I need to. Jenny says, I'm drowning in tomatoes. I sowed loads for the allotment. Now plans have changed. I will be planting as many as I can squeeze in the garden and veg beds. Jenny, do you want to share your news on the allotment, or is that keeping quiet before I put my foot into it? Digwell says, tomatoes don't mind being close together as their roots do not spread. It is the foliage that matters with diseases, etc. Absolutely, absolutely. And Digwell agrees with Nigel about them growing, tasting better. The sun does not ripen tomatoes, Digwell says. No, it doesn't. I meant more that the sun sort of warms the sugars. I was trying to be a bit simple, or keep my wording simple. It's more that the sun sort of not ripens tomatoes, but it does something to the sugars more than anything else. But I was trying to keep it simple. Nigel says potatoes grown in 30-litre pots placed next to each other. I know quite a few people are growing potatoes in pots rather than in the ground. I'm still growing my potatoes in the ground, and I give them probably 30 centimetres of space between each plant. Although the main crops get more space because I want more of bigger potatoes. But I am thinking about growing them in pots again, maybe one year. Stuart says, I'm not growing potatoes this year as I have less veg space this year. Yeah, one of the things on this note, one of the things I want to say, I have been using straw as a mulch for my potatoes down on the allotment. You know, my big corrugated iron beds. I'm growing potatoes in those this year, and I've planted out the potatoes and I've been covering them. I've planted them in the soil like I would normally do. Instead of using compost or soil as a mulch, I have been using straw, and it is working really, really well. I harvested our first early potatoes yesterday. Beautiful, delicious. The plants look healthy. They're growing strong. I reckon we're going to get some good potatoes out of them this year. So straw for me, I know we're doing straw bale gardening as well, but I am certainly moving on to using straw, certainly as a mulch, more in the future. Turbo Stream says, my tomatoes didn't germinate, nor the celery, so no idea on spacing. It's all about tomatoes, but a few people are having problems this year. Yes, you can say no secrets, says Jenny. So Jenny has taken the hard decision, and I think this is the right decision, to give up her allotment. Now, she's had a lot going on, which I won't go into the details of, but needless to say, the allotment has taken a back seat and it's been a bit too much work for her. So she's given up the allotment. And you know how much I love allotments, how much I love my allotment. Giving up an allotment must be a hard thing to do. It certainly was when I gave up my first allotment. But at the same time, it's the right thing to do. Jenny still grows at home, of course, so she's not growing anything. She's just growing more at home. Digwell says, always thought you were simple, Richard. I like to keep things simple. Nigel says, I think trace elements in soil enhance flavour. So those trace elements could also be in the greenhouse if you grow in the ground. But who knows? Who knows? This would be a scientific experiment, wouldn't it, to find out what causes outdoor tomatoes to taste better than indoors. Potatoes 9 inches. That's quite close together, isn't it? That's quite close indeed. I did potatoes in bags this year. They are in flower, main crop, if I remember correctly. Excellent, excellent. Scott says, I plant my potatoes in the same place every year and always miss some when harvesting. So spacing goes out the window when volunteers pop up. Volunteers always seem to grow better than the ones you plant, don't they? Don't they? Nigel says, grown spods in pots for the last 5 years, mulched with straw usually, and also store far better than those grown in the ground. See, one of the reasons that I've been thinking about growing more potatoes in pots, apart from, is the fact that you're less likely to spear them and digging them out the soil. But I've also found potatoes to be a good way of getting rid of my couch grass at the same time. So I'm weighing up the options here, weighing up the options. Turbo Stream says, I'm already harvesting black currants and the red currants are turning red too. I'll tell you a story about currants a little bit later on. Jenny says the association have been really kind and been in touch today. They are looking for accessible plot for me, and it's something they would like to address in the future so everyone can grow. Excellent. That is good news. That is very good news because we've got accessible plots on our allotment and they get used. It's good news indeed. Graham says also sent pics of wrens fledging this morning. Um, I'll check that out later. Digwell says, I use S Shalad I cultivate for trace elements and some complicated stuff there. I hope everything works out for you. Jenny says, Idaho. Digwell plants in 30 litres buckets are only 4 inches apart. So why any further in the ground? Potatoes are only 4. Yeah, because the roots are contained is where I would go with that. Yeah. Nigel says autopots are using bad compost. Thank you. Tell me, I'm finding the allotment a bit much this year too. On the cusp of either downsizing or giving it up too. Trying to come up with a plan to remodel my garden to allow growing at home. You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I am finding my allotment not so much a hard work, but it feels like it needs a lot of work at the moment. I'm not complaining because I quite enjoy it, but it just feels like in certain areas, the couch grass and where things haven't grown in where I planted them in the ground, things like the beans that refuse to germinate, um, a lot of those beds are looking empty. But all I'm doing now is just filling those up with any plants that I have available, and we'll address that in the future. Jenny says the best potatoes I've grown squeezed in under my peas. Companion planting, love it, love it. Nicholas says I've grown pots in 30 litres for potatoes. Have trouble with rats, came autumn, so need to cover with wire mesh if not harvesting straight away. Obviously, I know Nicola's got a lot of arsenic in her soil, so that's probably one of the reasons she has to grow in pots as well. Our allotment has raised beds for folks that can't manage a full or half plot. They look great. Kate says, absolutely heartbreaking giving up an allotment. Unfortunately, know what it's like due to health. Putting yourself first is always the right thing to do, and time gardening is great with raised beds. So one of the things I want to say on this now is that gardening for us is a hobby. Okay, for me, it's also a way of life. But when you don't enjoy it, when you're finding it too much hard work, that's when you've got to think about whether it's worth it. You know, I love going down my allotment. I love doing stuff in the garden. I'm always thinking of ways of doing things. But if it was hard work, if it was becoming that I wasn't enjoying it, then we would have to think again. Thumbs up all, says Nicola. Yeah, please do give us a thumbs up. Please do give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, and all. And don't forget, click the notifications for all that jazz. Graham says, I am only strict with brassica spacing 18 inches apart. They seem to have better results, especially cauliflowers and calabrese. So funny enough, that's the next thing I was going to ask when it get into the brassicas. How much space do you give Brussels sprouts? I like to give those 45 centimetres or 18 inches of space around the Brussels sprouts. I do find they do need quite a bit of space. But then when I look at them growing, it looks like they could actually grow a little bit closer than that. What do you think on that? How much space do you give Brussels sprouts? Jenny says, thank you, Kate. I'm happy to get accessible plot. If they manage to find one that would work, great. They are thinking of the need. Indeed. Turbo Stream says, my fatigue has returned this spring, so having another ECG this week. More bloods to try and find out why. Getting old sucks at the moment. Yeah, I know. I don't know what I can say to help make you feel better, but, you know, we're all in the same boat. We're all getting older. We're all here each week to discuss that. Nicholas says, I struggled the last few years and almost gave up on the veg plot, but have started revamping with solid paths as found wood chip broken down too quickly. Don't have the same physical strength. Yeah, this is what I gave up on wood chip paths. They look great, but they do break down quite quickly, unless you can get a supply of them quite regularly. I prefer grass paths, but that's because I like mowing the lawn, and that's compost material. But I have the time to do that and the strength to do that. May not be right for everybody. Um, Digwell says maybe best to go before being pushed if you're finding it hard to manage. It's not that I'm finding it hard to manage. I think it's just the way this year has gone on. Um, one of the big problems is, and this is something I wanted to talk about. So this is my allotment. Um, they're not going to push me off. Trust me. I've got a good relationship with the people there. Um, so the problem I've got is I've got two plots, and most of it is fine. It's just around the edges that need a bit of tidying up and tarting up. But my biggest problem is where it kind of runs alongside my neighbours, and I've spoken about this before. But my neighbours didn't attend their plot at all last year, and then that meant that all the weeds were coming over, and I'm trying to fight it back as much as I can. They've been evicted, but nobody's taken on that plot. The weeds, I kid you not, they are 6 foot tall. They've got these huge brambles that is smothering over my red currants and black currants, etc., etc. I tried cutting it back yesterday. I've got a video coming out this week where you'll see what's going on. I tried cutting it back, but my strimmer ran out of string. That's where I'm finding it hard, because I'm trying to fight back the weeds from my neighbours, is taking it away from the things that I actually want to do, if that makes sense. Once new people go in or something is done about that plot, I'm sure it will be fine. Nigel says to Turbo Stream, you're still a young pup, but I love my plot, says Turbo Stream. Hopefully I can find a solution to make it less work. And Ido says, I'm right with you, Nicola. Sprouts, 9 inches. That's half of what I give, says Digro. Interesting. That does feel about right, actually. That's 9 inches, 25 centimeters. That does feel about right based on what I'm seeing. I don't know why seeds and books say to give Brussels sprouts 45 centimeters. Turbo Stream says, I know, Nigel, but I feel an old codger at the moment. 30 centimeters, says Nigel. Again, that feels about right. It does, 45 centimeters does feel like there's a lot of empty spaces around them. I guess it's mildew or something that benefits from airflow. Why do books recommend 45 centimeters for them? Wood bark is better than wood chip for paths. Scott says, I've considered giving up the allotment, but think I'm going to cover half of it next year. This will kill the weeds and give me less work. Yep, absolutely. Now, we're going over to pavers free from Facebook Marketplace, but have stuff to do with 3.5 acres to worry about maintaining paths. This is it. It's more about picking your battles, isn't it? And spending time where you need to. Nicholas says, thanks, I need to get stronger. Scott says they will cover the other half the year after. Absolutely. Jenny says, good idea, Scott. Covering half will take a lot of the stress away. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one thing to do, isn't it? Turbo Stu says, I'm thinking paths between beds, but it might be I grow low maintenance stuff on the allotment. One square is dedicated to rhubarb and straw fruit. That worked well. Absolutely. I think one of the things I've always thought about, I know we're going off topic here, but I think it's quite a good topic, actually. Way I've always treated my allotment, obviously I have a garden here at home that we grow a lot of our vegetables in it as well. And my allotment and my garden are both the same size. A garden, it does have a patio area. We've got my veggie pods, we've got greenhouses, we've got sheds, we've got somewhere to dry clothes. So it's got slightly different use to what we have on the allotment. But the way I like to think of my allotment is where I can grow more of the plants that can look after themselves. So things like potatoes, onions, garlic, beans. You won't find lettuce growing on my allotment because they can't look after themselves. They need pretty hard care. So that's the way I look at my allotment. It's a place to grow stuff that can look after itself a little bit better than what we have at home. Nigel says, I've shut 25% of my beds down this year, covering with black plastic and plan to replace raised bed surrounds with upturned pavers. Why why have you closed 25% of your beds down this year? Because that is about the amount of beds that I'm struggling with, actually, 25% of mine. Why have you done that? Tell the committee that you will use Roundup on that plot if they do not take action, as it is ruining your crops. I bet they will sort it out. So it's the council. So our allotment is council run. We do have a committee, actually. Um, I've had conversations, quite a few conversations with Guy in charge of our allotments. He's a lovely bloke, actually. I have a good laugh with him. And I complained about that plot last year. I don't like complaining about anybody's allotment now. I'm going to be honest. I don't like complaining about anybody's allotment. It was just how bad it was last year. This year is even worse. And that's why they evicted them, which I'm not happy that I caused that, but I think it had to happen. And they haven't been able to get hold of them anyway, so the people who had that plot. So they are trying to find somebody to take on that plot. There's lots of fruit trees, there's a couple of greenhouses, there's a shed, there's lots of tools already on that plot. So if somebody was to take it on, they're good to go. But there's over 200 allotment plots on my allotment site. And in my area, so I've got this track that runs next to mine. I've got my 2 plots. There's 2 more plots to the top, including the one I'm talking about. And then on the other side of the track is another 2 plots. Well, all those plots have been vacated this year, and they've had a tractor in clearing the other 2 this year. So there's hope. I think it's just down to finances. They've got to try and get rid of the greenhouses and get a skip in to clear the plots before they can start working on the one that I'm talking about. So it is in action. The one to the one of the others had a huge shed with loads of tires on top of the shed, which I think that cost a lot in skips to try and get rid of now, and it's taken up a lot of the allotment finances just clearing that one plot. So I think that's where the trouble is. They're trying to do something, they're just struggling. Nicholas says, I like your raised beds money boots made of pavers. Indeed, it's a good idea. They're going to last a long time. Nigel says, I'm resizing slightly and did not want to disturb any crops growing. I will top dress with cow manure and let it sink over the coming months. It's a good idea. It is a good idea. I'm just trying to think what I could do with those beds. I mean, I think just throw in whatever plants I have. Turbo Stream says, my problem at home is the light levels and slugs. The slugs eat absolutely everything tasty. I would need to find a solution before I go ahead and plan it. Get the slug population down. If it's damp, that's probably why. If it's got light problems, etc., etc. Yeah, go get the slug population down. Nicholas says, Richard, can you not brush cut 3 to 4 inches near your plot and pot down black plastic down to reduce weed growth? So it's going to conversation I didn't think we were going to go down, but it's good. So yesterday I did strim sort of half of it, about 3-4 inches in, to try and get it back. It was bad. I ran out of string on my strimmer, so I pulled out. You remember that tool I showed you with like the hooked blade? When I was sharpening a tool, I pulled a tool similar to that and I started sort of clearing away at it, and I got about halfway down, and then there was loads and loads of plastic bags, plastic pots, plastic trays and stuff that are just in the way, and I would have to clear brambles and grass away from all this plastic stuff. And when I say plastic bags, remember the old sort of laundry bags people used to take their laundry or their clothes down the laundrette in, those big bags? We're talking about one of those, or several of those actually, hidden under the grass. So that's why I couldn't go any further. It's annoying. It is very annoying. Stuart says, this is the reason I want to turn the school garden into a community space to help me and the children. I never have the time for everything. Who does? Who does have the time for everything? Digwell says, council committee, it is their responsibility to sort it out. A council would act after 2 warning letters. So, yeah, they've been evicted. They've done the council has evicted the people. I believe they would have lost their deposit for that reason. I think they're meant to be charged for the clearing as well, but they couldn't get hold of them, so we don't know what's happened there. Don't know what's happened there. I'll be honest, the family that was on it were Ukrainians, so we don't know what's gone on there. But they've evicted them because of non-compliance. It's a shame, but it is bad. I would cut 2 to 3 foot. That was my sort of intention. My strimmer ain't going to do the job, though. My strimmer isn't going to do the job. I'll have to quickly try and find a photo, won't I, to show you what I'm dealing with. I might. Have I got a photo? I might have one, actually. Digwell says, is it just me or is the video poor video quality? My stats say 14. It should be. It should still be. I haven't changed the quality. I'll have a look. Thomas says, video okay here in Brighton. Video good here, says Idaho. Pedal faster, Digwell. Video resolution okay here. Thank you. Thank you. Rebecca, hello. How are you doing? She says, this time of year, I think a lot of us gardeners can feel overwhelmed with jobs. We've just to remind ourselves little and often. Also, if it's not done, it doesn't matter. I'll wait until the following week, and good enough is good enough. Yeah, you are absolutely right. I mean, I'm a big advocate for little and often. That's why I tend to my garden every morning. I tend to my allotment every evening. And then do big jobs at the weekend. So yeah, I'm with you on little and often. I think it's because it's been such a dry spring. It's been a little discombobulating, I guess. But we are in June, and I guess really I should be thinking about it. Tommy Swim says, can you move plots, Richard? I don't want to move plots. I don't want to move plots at all. I love my allotment. I've been there for long enough. I've got to know it now. It's just that top bit, and I just got to worry about the edges. But yeah, little and often. In fact, I write a list every Sunday after I finish talking to you guys. I write a list of all the jobs that I want to tackle this week, so that I got a plan of what to do every day. We go there. Nicholas says 3 to 4 foot. Digger's tried reloading, and apparently it's better now. Who knows? Nigel says, if council won't sort it out, weed whacker 2 foot, then glyphosate. Job done. Yeah. The trouble is, my point here is, though, that all the time I'm doing this, it's taking me away from the jobs that I want to do. You know what I mean? I don't want to be sorting out somebody else's weeds when I've got my own weeds to sort out. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So I'm gonna, yeah. Something needs to happen. Something needs to happen. Jenny says, Richard, could you knock some small posts in and out and some damp-proof membrane as a barrier fence? Membrane is usually cheap and tough. Not sure how long the boundary is. It'll be a 10-meter boundary. I could do that, but then I would have to get rid of the brambles first. I mean, the bramble, the branches are trying to think. Well, they were good. They're really thick branches on these brambles. Trying to find something I can compare them to. Looking around, I can't see anything at the moment, but it is a problem. It is a problem. Turbo Stream says, I love my plot too. It would probably be easier to cover 25% of it until I can sort things. Yeah. Yeah. Rebecca also says, can you put a little fence up, Richard? We've done it with ours and it's saving us. It might be an idea. I mean, technically, we've got to get permission to pull up a fence, but I think if I have a chat with my guy, he'll probably be okay with it. But knowing my luck, I'll probably go and put a little fence up and then somebody will take it on and it won't be a problem anymore. I think that's the trouble. We know we have people on the waiting list for our allotments. There's something like 26 people on the waiting list for an allotment on our council. Okay, we've got quite a few sites. We've got quite a lot of plots. But I know there's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. There's 5. No, that's a full plot. 2 full plots. one half plot and two quarter plots that are free available next to me, basically. And then I can think of more plots on the site that are also free and available, even though there's a waiting list. Doesn't quite add up, does it? Scott says, I think I could get away with covering all my beds next year, but mulch them first and then spend the year doing the groundwork improvements. So my actual plan, um, so this is going into a bit of a conversation I didn't think we would be going down. So my plan on making my allotment that bit more easier to manage moving forward. So one of the big things that we've been doing this year, experimenting with this year's straw bale gardening, which is working really well. We've got lots of various plants planted in straw bales, both at home and down on the allotment. My plan was I've put 2 straw bales in a planter. We're going to rot that down and use that for growing plants in. And if it works, we end up with some half decent compost in the planter already, and as well as using it. So what I was going to do moving forward, every year I was going to take a couple of those beds and just do straw bale gardening in some of those beds. The idea being the straw is going to sit on the beds, block out any weeds from growing anyway as straw bales. We're going to be adding all the feeds and stuff, so it's going to make it easier to maintain while still being a productive and growing space. And then, of course, that'll rot down to compost, so we get compost out of it as well. But then the beds, like I'm doing with the potato bed, really, the beds that have got stuff growing in, I'm going to mulch with straw. Ideally, I would use compost, but we can't produce enough compost at the moment. So I'm going to use straw instead. Straw costs me £3.50 a bale, so it's peanuts, really, and it'll mulch a good couple of beds. So a combination of the two is making my beds, my actual allotment, easier to manage in that regard. It's just the edges I've got to worry about to take on a bit more. That's my plans anyway. So all this talk of covering over, I think, great idea if that's what you can do. But have a look at straw bale gardening or things like that as well as another option. Brush killer says, Nigel. Yeah. Again, I shouldn't have to do that though, should I? A bit of careful spraying it, and it will be dead in a few weeks with no damage to the soil, etc. The trouble is, there's some beautiful fruit bushes on this plot, like apple trees and stuff, and there's a lot of them. I'm thinking of digging some of them up if I can get permission to dig some of them up because they are good. Turbo Stream says, I would suggest you ask permission to trim a section if that is a problem. They can't say no, in all honesty. I didn't ask, I just got on and done it. I'm going to try and do a bit more, though. Turbo Stream says, SBK is good. I finally managed to control the brambles this year. Okay. I'm not a 1-4 weed killer, but, I think there's a place for weed killer, though. That is what Richard needs. Okay, I'll have to look into it. Stuart says, with straw mulch for potatoes, is it just straw or compost to start them off? Sorry, I'm not sure how it works. Okay, so Stuart, there are a few ways of doing this. The way I've done it is I've put my potatoes in the ground about 30 centimeters deep, like you would normally if you were planting potatoes normally. I waited until the potatoes had started to grow up through the soil, and then I covered them over with a straw mulch, and I've continued doing that as they've grown. So that is probably the most reliable way of doing it. And that's how I do it as well, by starting them off in the ground and then just adding the straw as they grow. The roof stout method, however, which is the sort of similar to what I'm doing. Ruth Stout, if you've not heard of her, she's well worth going and checking out. But her method is you would place the potatoes on the soil and in place, she would use hay, I believe, but straw hay on top of the potatoes. It didn't feel right to me, but it is meant to work. So either way would work. Hopefully I've explained that well, but for me, using it in the ground and then adding the straw afterwards is working. My spare square is hopefully grown as squash if they survive. Digwell says, I've replanted 4 of my straw bales from last year. I was going to use all of them as mulch, but I'm glad I did not. Things are growing well. Yeah, I'm really intrigued with straw bale gardening because it is working really well. Definitely better than it did last year as well. I'm really intrigued with how well it is going, and more importantly, I'm really intrigued to see just how many potatoes or how many or how much compost we're going to get out of it, or mulch, or anything like that to improve our soil. Toby Stream says, I use very little SBK on the emerging bramble leaves. It doesn't need much if you are careful. Do they? I was trying to. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I was looking for. You remember the sort of weed killer that you used to sort of paint on? It wasn't a spray, but it used to be almost like a deodorant stick that you just painted onto the leaves. They don't seem to sell that anymore, unless that's just something I can't find. Digwell says, I'm using the Digwell Stout method this year. Spuds 4-inch deep, then straw on top. I did pure roof sprout a while back and the slugs ate the seed spuds. There we go. There we go. That's kind of what I'm doing as well, in the ground and in straw. I grow spuds in pots just 3 to 4 inches as a top layer and then keep damp. That is SBK, Richard. I haven't seen it for a long time. Perhaps it's just not being sold near me. Right, I am going to go to the video clip for tonight, which is the cook along, the roast radish it was. Okay, so for today's recipe, we've got roasted radishes. I've gone out and collected some radishes from the garden. I've topped and tailed them and cut them in half, put them in the bowl to save on washing up. Add a bit of oil. Probably a bit too much oil in there, but we don't mind that. We're going to add a few spices, touch of paprika, bit of ground cinnamon. I'm making this up as I go, by the way, just because I like to. Good sprinkling of pepper. And just a touch of salt. I don't often add salt, but for this I think I will. And then added to that, yesterday I harvested my garlic. We've got a couple of good cloves of garlic here. So we're going to just add that in as well. Just to add a nice bit of garlic flavour to it. Oh, love garlic. Love garlic. By the way, I don't peel garlic cloves anymore when you're using a mincer, because I find just scratching it like that, the sides of it come off. So there we go, we've done the prep work really. All I'm going to do now, give us a bit of a mix up so everything is coated in all that flavour, all that oil, and then that will roast in the oven for about 25 minutes. And then what we'll do, we'll go back to the studio and see just how it tasted. This is going to go lovely with our Sunday roast. Indeed, so this is what they came out looking like, and what do they taste like? That is always the question. We had these for our with our roast pork tonight, so I know what they taste like, but I'll do it live on air for you. Lovely. Paprika. Paprika just added a nice kick to that. Absolutely lovely. I'm going to give that a good strong 9.5 out of 10. Absolutely delicious. I love radishes anyway, but that was really nice. So Stuart says, thanks team for this advice. I just realised I've got to get rid of that banner. Thanks team for the advice. Where was it? Where is he? I've lost it. Yeah, thanks team for the advice. This is why I love this group. You always get good advice. Thank you very much. Rebecca has a question, certainly not judging anyone. People garden how they wish, but I've noticed in my first year at the allotment how many people are throwing weed killer around. My question is would this damage your soil and veg? And if so, and you use chemicals, why would you grow your own? You might as well just buy from a supermarket Save your time if you don't like organic food. Like I say, just something I've noticed a lot. So this is always one of those questions that comes up. There is a train of thought that people believe that you can't start an allotment without using weed killer. Now, I do not use weed killer. I do not use weed killer. I believe weed killer does have a place, but I do not use it. But I'm not knocking anybody that does use it or anything like that. I think the reason why it is used so much is because it is a good alternative. Now, I will say I'm no scientist. I say this quite often, but there is a lot of people that will say that the um, the chemicals in it is neutralized by the sun, so it doesn't invade your soil. Glyphosate is something, things like that. I don't know the full, excuse me, on that. I don't know the full facts on that, but I don't use weed killer. Um, I'll throw that out to everybody else if they have any ideas on um, why would you use weed killer? Again, no judging. Uh, Jenny says, I want to grow in bales at the allotment, but I couldn't get the bales on the plot. I've asked for an accessible plot next to the internal road. Then I can make raised beds and have soil delivered. Yeah, I thought I got rid of that. Hang on. Um, yeah, it's not easy. There we go. I thought I got rid of that. There we go. Just getting rid of that. It's not easy if you haven't got a good access to your allotment. And we have stupid rules that we're not technically allowed to get things like that delivered. But straw bales, I think, are a good alternative. They really are, if it can work for you. The beds will be hip height so I can manage. Also need the car next to the plot as I can't carry harvested veg, etc. So many things to think about, hopefully one day. Fingers crossed. Digwell says, fingers crossed, you know where I am if you need any advice. I'm having real trouble with the things tonight. Jenny says, bless you. Digwell says, that recipe would be good using daikon mole. Oh, that would be good. That would be good indeed. That's something to think about, isn't it? Looks delicious, says Jenny. Nigel said, how about horseradish? Oh, that would be good. Roasted horseradish. Oh, lovely, lovely. Scott says a little bit of cold whipped feta and the hot roasted radishes served on top. Beautiful. Oh, you're making me hungry again. Lovely. Turbo Stream says, I've not noticed my plot's neighbours using weed killer. I'm very reluctantly using it, only sparingly on the brambles on my allotment. I think the committee frown on its use, but don't ban it. So one of the stories that I'm going to share, I was part of a group, this going back 20 odd years ago, and I was asked by a couple, they had a beautiful nature garden, but they had bamboo growing in the garden. And the bamboo was actually grown through the house. And when I say grown through the house, it was coming up through the floorboards. And they were asking for advice on how to get rid of it. And I said, in that case, weed killer. As I say, I hate weed killer. Don't want to use it myself, but I believe there's a space for weed killer. And in that example, the reason I said weed killer is that if it's grown through the house, it's possibly going to damage the foundations of the house. Well, this couple, they didn't want to use weed killer. They were dead set against it. About a year later, they came back and said that they had to have their house and their neighbour's house knocked down because the bamboo had destroyed the foundations. That is why I'm not against weed killer completely, but I'm against the sort of, I don't like the people who just grab the weed killer as persistent instead of a bit of hard work. Digwell says, we're not supposed to use weed killer on the plots, but I use 10 to 20% vinegar and it kills the weeds with no damage to the soil, etc. If anything, it helps lower the pH. Good for veg. Nigel says, certain weed killers are inert once they reach the soil. It's down to training to use sparingly, direct on the target area. Same as slug pellets, a few around each plant. I see some plots, a sea of blue. Yeah, yeah, using it correctly um, and using it right. I mean, I've got mare's tail out in front of my house. There's no way that's going to go without anything but weed killer. Stuart says, weed killer for me. If you have to pot it on gloves and PPE, I will not use it. Also, not allowed to use any chemicals at school. Yes, horseradish. Another one for horseradish. That sounds like a good idea. Digrat says, if you played a bit of Dr. Dre on your plot, you would have hip hop, hip high bales. Hip hop, hip high bales. Excellent one. Excellent. So, yeah. So, weed killer. It's a bit of a. I know it is a bit of a very argumentative subject. There's people who are dead set against using weed killer. There's people who will happily use it, and I actually believe most of us, especially us in the audience, sit in the middle. I think from the conversations we're having, I tell you what, let's ask a question: who here will never use weed killer? Who, put your hands up if you would never ever use weed killer? There's no shame. There's no shame. Tab Extreme says but the mare's tail survived Hiroshima bomb, so weed killer won't help you. Rebecca's put her hand up and saying me. She would never use weed killer. Yeah. What about the scenario of the bamboo grown through the house? Would you use weed killer then? I'm just going to throw that out there. Again, I don't think I've ever used weed killer. I can't stand the stuff. I cannot stand the stuff. I'm trying to think if I've ever used it. But I would say if we had to use it, it's because we had to use it. Over on Instagram, Toby Clark 55555 has joined, and Michelle McLean Home has joined. I wish I had a clean home. I'm useless. I'm absolutely useless at housework. Scott says, I don't use weed killer, but it has its place. Farming would be difficult without it, but that's why I don't use it in my veg. It's free from oil, and you can't be that in the shops. Yeah, so this is one of the things I've learned from Clarkson's farm is that the wheat that's all sprayed with weed killer to kill it off at the same time, so it's all ready for harvesting. So if we're eating bread, we're eating weed killer. In the theory, I mean, again, I'm no scientist. I'm told it's not actually found in the foods, but that following that logic. Digwell says the new Roundup Naturals weed killer is very similar to vinegar, no lasting chemicals. Interesting. I'm trying to think. I've got boxes of stuff from some of the events that they're probably thinking there might be some weed killer in it, but I've never used it. So interesting to see if it is Roundup. Kate says, on my old plot, the guy opposite took it on full of weeds. I kid you not, he poured petrol over it and set it alight. It was a miracle he didn't set anyone else's on fire too and close to sheds. Yeah, it's petrol, amazing, isn't it? I will never use weed killer. I won't use weed killer. Nigel says white vinegar, salt, and a splash of liquid soap is a good weed killer. Natural alternative, isn't it? Rebecca says no, never. We have bamboo out of control in the never. We had bamboo out of control in the garden. Weed dug it up. It took months. When I first took on the allotment, my plot was 6 foot high with weeds. 3 neighbours told me to get it sprayed. I just thanked them politely and ignored and dug everyone up by hand. Absolutely. My point with the garden that I was talking about as the example is that it wasn't digging out the bamboo wasn't going to do any good at that point because it was already growing through the foundations of the house. Had they controlled it before it hit the foundations, it would have been fine. They would have been able to control it. This is the point that I think we need to make. As I said, I don't judge anybody for using weed killer, but I think some people go for it a bit too quickly when actually a bit of hard work will get it done. Stuart says, when I was a child, we were paid to weed the wheat and barley, £1 an hour. £1 an hour, wow. But now the spray every year. Yeah, absolutely. Over on Instagram, Mark J8108 has joined. Welcome along. We've now gone into the realms of weed killer, making an interesting discussion, actually. Digwa says if the plant drew up the weed killers, then it would also draw up manure, urine, dead rats, etc. It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm no scientist on this. I, um, I, I'm no scientist, so you have to trust what the scientists tell us. But there is concerns over weed killer at the same time. Idaho says, I used weed killing sparingly. I usually get the 30% vinegar spray. I have a couple others that are organically approved, but use Roundup on persistent perennial weeds that just won't go away. Bindweed. Absolutely. Anna Jones says, evening all. Sorry I'm so late. Lovely to see you, Anna Jones. Hope you are well. We've gone down the conversation of weed killer, whether you would use it or not. Get some strong vinegar, mate. Results much quicker. Nigel says, I use glyphosate to weaken mare's tail and bindweed. Yeah, yeah. So, again, I'm not a lover of weed killer at all. I don't want to use it. Well, he doesn't live there anymore, but my neighbour next door is a landscape gardener. I was always amazed. He said that one of his customers was a garden centre. He looked after the gardens at a garden centre. I was a bit, well, the car park, sorry. I was a bit sort of surprised at that. What he turned around and told me is that it's because of the weed killer that he uses. You have to have certain certifications and training. So it was easier to hire him to weed killer the car park than it is to train in staff. So that sounds a little bit worrying to me at the same time. Toby says, hi all, hello to you over on Instagram there. Nigel says, I would try the stuff I pickle my onions in. Turbo Stream says, oh, I missed it. I use my weed killer every 6 inches to return to the original topic. Yeah. Hi all, says Toby. Unless you only eat organic, then you will be consuming an element of pesticides, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, even organic. I mean, there could be pesticides. They're just organic pesticides as well. We are all garden how we like to garden, not right or wrong way, really. Absolutely. This is why I've always tried avoiding this conversation on weekend. And funny enough, I'm glad that it's gone down the right way, because as I said, I don't like to use weed killer, but I've never criticised anybody for using it, and we all garden our own way. So I'm kind of glad that you've brought this conversation up. Especially if you have allium white rot. I think I've got that. On my garlic this year. Jenny says, I've damaged intestines. I eat supermarket veg. If I eat supermarket veg, I'm ill. Doc says it's the chemicals. That's why I won't go anywhere near it, as I'll be ill. Also, a huge wildlife gardener, homegrown and organic. Absolutely. It is a shame, isn't it? I mean, this could be a topic for next week, organic gardening, with some suggestions of some topics, but it could be a suggestion. Organic gardening. That could be a topic for next week. Right, you've sent me the mission for this week, which let me bring this over here. I've done this in a slightly different to a normal. It's not a video, it's a slideshow. So the mission you sent me last week, by the way, I forgot to mention, if you have a mission for next week, start a message off with #mission, and then we'll use our draw to find it. But I'm going to be pushed for time next week. I'm at Gardener's World Friday and Saturday. If it's Gardener's World related, fantastic, because we can do that. But I'm going to be pushed for time next week. But this week's mission was to get AI to design a show garden. So I went to ChatGPT and I asked it, I would like you to design me a show garden for a garden show like RHS Chelsea. The garden will be 3 metre by 3 metre. I want the garden to only have edible plants in it, with a small potting shed and a greenhouse. Now, I could have added a bit more to that, to be honest, thinking about it, but it came up with quite a good answer that I thought it'll make the show. So it came back with, "Hi Richard, here's a concept for your 3 meter by 3 meter RHS style edible show garden. Designed to be both practical and inspirational for visitors who want to grow their own food in small spaces. It includes only edible plants, a compact potting shed, and a mini greenhouse, all with the limited footprint." So the garden concept name it came up with, the Edible Retreat, and it's a micro garden that proves you can grow a feast in just 9 meters squared. The design overview, a diagonally divided layout that uses vertical space, clever structure placement. One corner houses a miniature potting shed, at the opposite a lean-to style greenhouse. The remaining triangles are intensively planted with a mixture of edible crops, herbs, and edible flowers. Key zones: northeast corner, 1.2 by 1.2 mini greenhouse, lean-to style with a cold frame at the base. Ideal for tomatoes, chilies, and microgreens. Southwest corner, 1.2 mini potting shed, vertical storage for tools, seed trays, and fold down potting bench planted in heritage green. Diagonal pathway, crushed gravel, brick brown, 45 centimeters connecting the corners, blah, blah, blah. Raised beds and containers. You get the idea of the overview. Planting scheme: core crops, dwarf peas and beans in wigwams, obelisks, courgettes in containers, tomatoes in greenhouse and hanging bar planters, cut and come again lettuces, miniature root veg, strawberries, herbs, chives, parsley, sage, lemon balm, mint, vertical herbs, wall on the back of a shed or fence using stack planters or recycled edible flowers, calendula, borage, viola, cornflowers. Structures, we've already gone into that. The mini potting shed 1.2 with a green roof with alpine strawberries or thyme. Fold-out potting shed with integrated compost storage, not a bad idea. Vintage touches, enamel signs, old tools, terracotta pots. Mini greenhouse, 1.2 lean-to against a back fence or panel fitted with automatic fence. Design touches, vertical growing. I'm quite impressed with how much information it's gone into. Trellis on the fence panels for climbing beans and cucamelons. Water feature, repurposed vintage watering can as a dribbling fountain into a trough planted with watercress. Wildlife hotel tucked under the shed for pollinators. Beautiful education tags, beautiful plant labels with QR codes linked to growing tips. So the story for the narrative for the judging would be: the show garden demonstrates how even a smaller space can provide abundance, beauty, and biodiversity, all from edible plants. It's a call to rethink what productive garden can look like, not rows and mud, but elegant scent and snackable colour. And this is what it would look like. This is what the artist's impression would look like. Now, I was quite impressed, actually. It came up with that. This was all done with AI. I didn't design this myself. I just got AI to come up with all the brief and everything else. And this is what it came up with. What do you think on that? What do you think on that? Is that something you would like to see at a show garden? Would that be something that interests you? Does that hit everything you were looking? Is that mission accomplished as well? I quite like it though. It does look very quaint. It does look very likable. It feels very squeezed in there. But I quite liked it. And Turbo Stream says that's a good design for AI, actually. I quite like it. There's something about it. Rebecca says you should bring that to life. I quite like it. I really do quite like it. I really quite like it. Scott says I'm using Chinese laptop, although very good sometimes. The keyboards match up. Mission of big tick, says Stuart. I really did quite like that. I think the sizing might be off because that potting shed at the front, 1.2 by 1.2, which is the same as the greenhouse at the back, doesn't quite look the same. But I liked it. I liked it a lot. What do you think? What do you think on that? Is that something quite impressive? Right, what have we got? What have we got? Sorry. A few comments came in during that time. Where were we? All the comments have moved again. I hate it when he does this. Sometimes it just suddenly moves. I've gone back to the horseradish. Petrol, we're there. Well, crikey, I hate it when it does that. I'm gonna, if you put some weak messages in, I may have missed them. But by the way, I saw a few missions come in with the hashtag mission. 2 people so far or have submitted a mission, so there's something going on there. Right, where were we? Organic Ebola virus, Drichin bovia, a brand name for the additive, are all organic. This thing, we might have to discuss this at length. That's a good design for AI. I've read that one. Where were we? Scott says, mission, find the most unusual edible fruit or veg. You need a hashtag at the beginning of that. Otherwise, it won't find it. It won't be entered in the drawer. Stuart says, hashtag mission. See if you can get a tool for under a £5, but it must be useful. We did that last year, if I remember correctly. We can certainly do it again, though. TurboStream says, hashtag mission, buy TurboStream a coffee. That can certainly be done as well. Mission, big ticks, says Stuart. Jenny says, I'm not an AI fan, but that's impressive. A lot of detail. Definitely mission accomplished. Remember, I think it was Digwell who set that mission last week. I was quite impressed with it. AI is definitely coming along. I'm not a fan, but it's definitely coming along. Nicola loved the design. Nigel, AI, very close example to qualify as a Veg podcast member. AI, very close example. Yeah. Idaho says that's really amazing. Yeah. Rebecca says, would it be nice, refreshing to see a Shogun like this? I love to see some more real Shoguns. But don't forget, there is a possibility. I'm very likely, I should say. I'll find out a bit more this week. But I've been told that we're going to be making a Shogun next year at a show in May. I've been given a nod, or we've been given a nod. I'm only collaborating on this. We've been given a nod. As soon as I know more details, I will tell you more, because I would love to see you all there and see your thoughts. But I really, really want to emulate that sort of thing in that. Scott says, hashtag find the most unusual veg. Oh, yeah, that's that. Turbo Sue says, I'm not an AI fan, but I can see its uses. Yeah. Good looking garden, says Digwell. Hashtag find some tools that children can use. Please not bright colour ones. Yeah, you found the you found the hashtag, Scott. Digwell says Sunday Girl has a Shogun at Gardens World Live. Yeah, I've seen that. I have seen that. What is her name? Yeah, Sunday Girl. I know who you're talking about. I'm looking forward to seeing that. There's a lot of work that goes into these show gardens. Anna Jones says, professional looking design stacks better than Monty's dog garden that contained poisonous plants. I haven't really looked much into that, but that was Chelsea for you, isn't it? I like that. I like that he gave you an illustration. Yeah, it was good. Scott says, on the phone now, not Chinese laptop, and it has the hashtag functionality. Ask AI how to remove brambles from the neighbouring plot. That I could do that, actually. I could do that. I guess we're coming up to the last 10 minutes of this show. Oh, Jamie's Little Allotment and Calassian has joined over on Instagram. Welcome along, guys. We've been having a bit of a conversation. We've talked about lots of things. We're now talking about AI and garden, but you've joined us at the point where I'm about to have my rant for the evening. And my rant is actually something that we've discussed already, so you kind of taken the wind out of me, but it's about the fact of empty, disregarded allotment plots. Now, I've mentioned that there's so many plots near my allotment that are going free. They're being ignored, which is annoying. It is very annoying because there's a lot of list of people who want it. There's a long list of people who want an allotment. Yeah, last year, my neighbours, they had their allotment, they didn't do anything with it. The year before that, they planted stuff. I've got photos coming up. Year before that, they planted loads of stuff, fruit trees and stuff, and then they didn't do anything with it. Yet there's people out there desperate for an allotment plot. As I've said, 26 people on the list in my area. And they could easily take on any one of these allotment plots near me, and it would be good. It would be good. I'm annoyed. But that's my rant. That's my rant. You've taken the wind out of me because we've already sort of discussed it a bit, but we'll go through to that in a moment. Nigel says, ask AI how to remove brambles from a neighbouring plot. Yeah, I don't like doing that while I'm talking to you guys. I probably could do that. I don't like tapping into things while talking to you guys because I feel I'm not talking to you while trying to type things. Mission, check your emails, see if that comes up. Just got an allotment, but need to take it easy as I've got a hernia, says Andrew. Sorry to hear that. You know what? Take it easy. Just get help as well. Don't be afraid to ask for people to help. One of the things we're all for doing is asking for help. Don't be afraid to ask. People are glad to help. Turbo Stream says you could ask AI for a short rant one week to see what it says. I could do that. You started this rant, but it's hard to be negative when I'm such a positive person. Photos are coming up. Stuart Jackson says, AI, I've only just learned to use my phone, so there's no hope for me. Honestly, AI is now becoming the fastest way to search for information, as I understand it. Nigel says, for years as secretary, I allocated plots on my site. As a plot was vacated, I would have it occupied within a week. Council took control of allocations, and now we have 4 plots with weeds 6 foot high. Exactly right there. Toby says, ask AI how to get slugs to eat weeds. It's a good one. We're going to have to do an AI edition, aren't we, one week and go through all these things. Terry says, do you want to do that next week instead of organic gardening? We'll ask AI a load of our gardening questions live on the screen. We're going to do that. Our committee divided big plots up to make smaller plots for the new plot holders. Yeah. Chat GPT, use herbicide, use glyphosate, bright-based weed killer on the regrowth. Apply it only when the bramble is actively growing and has enough leaves to absorb chemicals. Idaho says maybe the people in the allotment list could ask what they want done. Maybe they want the shed, greenhouses, apple trees, and just want brambles gone. Absolutely. I think people are showed these plots, but they run away because they're suddenly afraid of the work. But I would be grabbing it up as soon as I could. Chili Cake says, our site moved a lot of people on, and now we don't have a waiting list. Shame, because we really need someone to take on the plot next door plot. Yeah, exactly right there. Please do keep the comments coming in. I'm going to try and keep an eye on all of these. But it's time to have a look at your photos. And I've got these photos here. I've got some sent in throughout the show as well, which I'll show you in just a moment too. So first of all, Chili Phil has reclaimed this growing space for Kate's melons. He said that this used to be their spot for growing before they took on the allotment. And since getting the allotment, it's been a bit neglected, but they've reclaimed it back and now they are looking good. Stuart's just harvested some broad beans. These look delicious, don't they? I love broad beans myself. My wife doesn't like them, but I love them. Nathan's broccoli is coming along lovely, isn't it? It's looking great underneath that netting. I do like broccoli as well. We had some broccoli tonight for our dinner, funnily enough. Steve shared this weather warning. This was yesterday. Did you get any thunderstorms yesterday? Because we got all these yellow warnings at thunderstorm. There was a lot of events cancelled near us. We didn't get any thunderstorms at all. We had a huge downpour of rain, but no thunderstorm. Andy is asking if anyone's used one of these before. It's an electronic soil tester. It tests pH, fertility, temperature, and stuff like that. Has anybody used one of those before? Let us know. Nicola's been cracking on with her garden. She said a few weeks ago she's been having a bit of a trouble with it, feeling overwhelmed, but she's cracked on, and I got to say, it looks absolutely fantastic what she's done. Just goes to show, break it down into small bits, work a bit at a time, and you can get on and do it. Now, Kate, she has found that a certain seed company has forgotten to pack her forget me not seeds. Bit of an oxymoron there, but no seeds at all in her forget me not seed pack. Wrong. It happens, but I'm sure if you complain, they will sort it out straight away. And Kate, this Chili Kate, also shared her plot shot for June. Look at that. How fantastic does that look? Now, Ricky has shared this post actually as well. This is something that's came up in conversation. This is a Colorado beetle. I can't remember what it's called, the exact name. But Defra Patel awarded this week that the Colorado beetle is causing a lot of issues for people as it's just become invasive in this country, in the UK. Apparently, it does a lot of damage to potatoes and tomatoes. I thought I saw one because I saw a yellow and black ladybird on my allotment, but it could have well been this because it does look a bit like a ladybird. Keep your eye out. Keep your eye out if you see this. Oh, wrong one. Sorry, I think. Was there any more? Was there any? Oh, no, that was it. Please do keep sharing your photos. We love to see them. Post them in our Facebook group. Send to me via social media or email me, richard@veggroundpodcast.co.uk. Let's move this screen back over to this screen. And let's see what we got. We've got 4 entries so far for next week's mission. Let's hope it's one I can easily do. Anybody got any idea of something you would like me to cook? Something quick, though, or something I could do at Gardener's World Live. As I said, I'm at Gardener's World Live on Friday and Saturday. Is anybody else going on those days? I know some of you are going on Thursday and Sunday. It's a shame I'm not there on those days. Thursdays, I still have to work. Friday's my day off. And Sunday, I need to be back for this show. So I don't do Sundays for that reason. Oh, just before, while I remember, we got I had emails of some photos. So this came in from Graham, and this was the moth photo. Hopefully, going to be a bit hard to see on the screen, really. That was the moth. I might have to use these next week, to be honest. Then there was the wrens. Then what else was there? More of the wrens. Hopefully you can see them okay. I don't know if you can. And then, oh, and a wrens again. There we go. There we go. So please do keep your photos coming in. Please do keep your photos coming in. We love to see them. Where were we? Where were we? I think the last time you used AI, you ran out of 3 questions. It's changed slightly since then, I believe, but we can still use. We can do it. We can do it. We can use the one. Yeah, we can do it. Nicholas says clearing brambles is hard work, but plastic rubbish can be harder. Talking about my neighbours. Yeah, it's just full of plastic over it. Digwell says it all depends how complicated the answer is. Talking about next week. I think we're going to do this Ask AI gardening questions next week. That would be quite easy to do. Digwell says Calabrese. Oh, yeah, the broccoli Calabrese. What is the difference between broccoli and Calabrese? I'm going to ask you guys that question. Chili Cake says, sorry, we've been quiet. Been testing out Phil's new pizza oven. Oh, love a pizza oven. Love a pizza oven. Digwell says we got rain, no thunder. Fantastic. Turbo Stream, no thunderstorms here. Chili Cake got thunder. And Jenny says, hope you have a nice pizza cake. We make dessert pizzas, which are very naughty, but very yummy. Yeah, yummy. Rebecca says, well, Kate, your allotment looks fabulous. Digwa says Colorado beetle is yet to get established in the UK, so that is why the sightings must be reported. Yeah, I know DEFRA are on high alert, especially in my area, because we're getting signs all over the place about it. Great pictures. Hashtag mission. Find a cheap meal at Gardener's World Live. Oh, that would be a good one. Oh, that's a shame, Richard. I'm Sunday this year. That's a shame. Quite a few of you guys are there on Sunday. It's only the reason I can't go on Sunday is it's a long way to travel back for work the following day. Although finishes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I could probably do it. It's I need to be here for you guys though. That's the reason. Are you in your van? I will be in my van. Yeah. Again, it's also about being back ready for work on Sunday and um, a lot of other things. I'm going Thursday. I might leave a few plants for you. Leave them with Lucy and Saul. Um, oh, with you, with you, with you. I'm with you. You're gonna not buy some, so I can buy some. Yeah. We called the one that the Colorado potato beetle. It's about twice the size of our ladybirds. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Is it a problem for you, Idaho? Tell us more. Chili cake, cook something in your van using the garlic you harvested this weekend. Oh, we could do that next week. Yeah. Yeah, but do you really want me going to Gardener's World Live on Saturday? Because I cook on a Friday. On a Saturday, stinking of garlic. I don't think that's going to be a good idea, but I could cook a van dinner. Cook a van dinner. Okay, that sounds like something we could do. Lovely photos, says Anna. Jenny says, great photos, everyone. Stuart, cooking task for next week. Find a bargain tea which you can cook or heat up in the evening. Scott says you could ask AI for a recipe given limited ingredients. We had rain but still spent most of the day in the garden. Calabrese is the most of what I think when we picture broccoli, the big green headed veg that we often are so wary of children. And broccoli refers to varieties like purple sprouting broccoli. Okay. I prefer to large green heads as calabrese and small sprouting purple heads as broccoli. Cool. That answers that. That answers that then. There we go. Right. So I've just realized I forgot to share screen. So we need to do the giveaway tool. So let's bring this up. Let's see, is it working? It is working. It is working. So anybody that has used the hashtag mission, their name goes into this and we will see who's comes up. So let's hit draw. There's everyone that put in a mission. And who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Winner is Graham Arnold, whose mission was to check my emails. So I've done that. I've done that, haven't I? I think he meant that as more of a joke. I was afraid of that. Let's see. Can we redraw? Can we redraw? Can we do that again? Oh, yeah, I just missed it. Ah, damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. So, right. Forget it. Forget it. Forget it. That didn't quite work the way it was meant to. So what mission do you want me to do? There was find something for under a fiver, find something for kids. There was what was Digwell's mission? I can't remember now. First mission that I see, we will do. What does everybody want me to do? I was looking forward to my coffee too. Ask AI to pick. Do it again. We ain't going anywhere. I can't do it again. Oh, I could. You have to do hashtag mission though. Let me set that up. All right. Okay. Oh wait, yeah. No, I can do it again. I can do it again. Here we go. I can do it again. Sorry. Right. Let me share this again. There we go. There we go. So I'm changing what I'm doing. Let's bring this up. Let's draw it again and see what happens. Digwell's mission this time. Digwell's mission is what we're going to do. So, what was your mission, Digwell? What was your mission, Digwell? Rebecca says mission £5. I'd do that anyway, to be honest. I've written them down, so I should close my eyes and pick quite that difficult. Find a cheap meal at gun as well. I'm half. If that was your mission, that's what we're going to do. But I'm tempted to do all of these anyway. Is that someone at the door? No, I think it was Roxy. Be funny if it picked Graham again. I was afraid of that. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the £5 mission. I'm going to do the cheap lunch mission. I'm going to buy Taro a stream of coffee. What was the fourth mission? I can't remember. I'm going to try and do all of them while I'm at Gardener's World. It is time, though, however, to get out of here. I've kept you late enough as it is. We've gone well into overtime. It's a Swiss Digwell 2 weeks running. Yeah. Yeah, it is time to get out of here. I do like using that now. I like using that competition picker for choosing a mission. I think that's what we're going to keep doing. We'll probably also do one for the cook along. Richard's going to have to read his own show notes. Anyway, right, it is time really to get out of here and get going for the evening. I'll see you on Friday or Saturday if you are Gardener's World live. Drop me an email if you are. But otherwise, I will see you Sunday back on this another live stream, 6 o'clock, where we're going to be talking about, or we're going to ask AI some gardening questions. Right, guys, you take care. I'll see you again next Sunday at 6.